Battle control initialized.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Red Alert Global League Season 9 Minions Round 3. In the upper right-hand corner, we have HansNihall playing as Russia. And in the lower left-hand corner, we have Zaqzorn playing as Ukraine. Let's go to the production tab. Wow, Zaqzorn with a solid 3.5 second lead in production and deployment of his barracks, and goes for the doggos. We'll see how he uses them. I like to see them used as scouts. Total of 5 oil derricks on this map, excuse me. And going for those oil derricks early is so important. That is a huge cash bonus in the early game. HansNihall now with a 5-second lead in production of his refinery. And going War Factory first. Zaqzorn sits on his refinery with an empty build queue, going double ref. HansNihall, the first to capture an oil derrick of the game. It's going to be reflected in income very shortly. Zaqzorn not far behind in capturing an oil derrick. HansNihall working his way down the right-hand side of the map and leading with the riflemen. Zaqzorn's going to take off to the left-hand side of the map. Zaqzorn and Hans about even, despite Zaqzorn having 2 harvesters. The oil derricks really add up quickly. And an APC out from HansNihall. And he's going to go hunting for some, he's going to go hunting for that engineer if he can find him. Zaqzorn evening up the scale, evening up the score on oil derricks, 2-2. HansNihall still only with 1 harvester. Flame tower in queue for Zaqzorn. Soviet versus Soviet. Taxicab APC. And we'll see where this goes. Going back up towards the base and maybe looping around. Neither player really going for the center of the map. HansNihall out with a large brigade of troops. Hans is up to 5 harvesters, and Zaqzorn's at 4 harvesters. 26 actions per minute for Hans, and 17 for Zaqzorn. Zaqzorn leading the way in oil derricks. And HansNihall going to come out with his MCV at about 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Flak truck leading a troop contingent down south. Still no significant engagements just yet. Oh, HansNihall with a recap. He's going to take the lead in oil derricks, and let's see if he can rinse and repeat this process for the rest of them. HansNihall with a Tesla coil. It's going to be an eco expansion from Hans. Queues up a mine layer as well. HansNihall going for his natural expansion. Zaqzorn. Where's that going? going for his natural expansion as well. And that was an eco expansion from Hans, followed up by a barracks. No eco slide just yet. Wow, several mine layers on the field. Hans's mine layers are covering several of the likely routes that Zaqzorn is going to take to flank Hans's base. Hans pops and drops. Or excuse me, Zaqzorn pops and drops, going for another eco expansion. And another recap. Zaqzorn is going to take back that oil derrick. That's a good Tesla coil placement. I like that with the cliff in the way. Mine layers going to town. Wow, gonna mine that whole area up. And it looks like Zaqzorn might make a move before that minefield is done, but on his current vector, he's gonna run right through that. HansNihall, invested in renewable energy, decides to take out the oil derrick at the center of the map. Denies Zaqzorn the line of sight. 6 minutes and 50 seconds. Zaqzorn on 8 harvesters, 2 oil derricks. HansNihall on 6 harvesters, 2 derricks. Income reflected as such. 10,000 to 8,000. And walking through the minefield. Maybe not. Maybe not. He knows there's a minefield now. And goes far north. Wow. Very good, Zaqzorn. Seven harvesters for HansNihall. Quite possibly soon to be 6. HansNihall drops a flame tower. And Zaqzorn is going to commit to this fight. And he's going to lose that whole army. HansNihall with counterattack. Oof. Both players losing a lot of army value. 8 minutes into the game, we've seen our first 2 engagements. A flank from Zaqzorn, missing the minefield. And Hans tripping over his own mines. Unfortunate. Hans also, I believe, lost both of his mine layers there. 33 actions per minute, HansNihall, to 23 actions per minute for Zaqzorn. Zaqzorn not eco-sliding. HansNihall's got a flame tower in his pocket. There it is. Oh, and an advanced power plant. Nice. Zaqzorn comes out with another mine layer. That might be the original mine layer, one of the 2. And Zaqzorn's got a big enough force here where if he plays his cards right, he could do quite a bit of damage to this base. Both players stopping their expansions. Zaqzorn with 2 expansions. And HansNihall with 1 expansion. HansNihall comes out with the V2. Firing into the tanks. Missing the troop mass. V2s don't find good hits. V2s move in for melee. Oh no. HansNihall loses his MCV, his expansion MCV, and Zaqzorn is going to make his escape towards the south side of the map, moving towards the Orf patch. Line of sight disadvantage, should really move away from the buildings there, and he's going to lose the majority of his troops and forces here. He might get to take out a harvester, but that's a lot of material down. Let's take a look at the numbers here. Zaqzorn down to 8,300 army value. HansNihall keeping his army alive up to 25,000. And that's all of it right there. Well, okay, he's got some down there. Zaqzorn going for mine layers as well. Mining the flank in a similar fashion. Perhaps a bit more efficiently than HansNihall did. And Zaqzorn's got no answer for this. That Tesla coil is going to do some damage. HansNihall keeping his massive force alive and onto his third expansion. Second expansion, excuse me. Lots of V2 rocket launchers from HansNihall. And we're looking at aircraft hitting the field in about 15 seconds, and that's the second expansion MCV out for... Oh, did he cancel it? Thought I saw an MCV queued up. HansNihall has got a... Yeah, he's gone full tech and he's building an iron curtain. Secret weapon, I think Zaqzorn is unaware that Hans has gone full tech. Zaqzorn power bombs in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. $35,000 worth of army value on the field. For Hans, and Zaqzorn is mining it up. That mine layer just sneaking right past the army of HansNihall and mining their retreat path. And Hans's force is smartly moving past it. Now, whose minefield is this? That's HansNihall's minefield. That's interesting. HansNihall looks like he's going to attack through the same vector again. And Zaqzorn with really good line of sight across the map. Those aircraft providing scouting. Mammoth tanks on the field from Zaqzorn. Tesla tanks coming out from HansNihall. Zaqzorn's mine layer gets destroyed. And Hans is going to look for a flank along the bottom of the map. Hans committing to Tesla tech. And that is a massive force from Zaqzorn. Tesla's, or excuse me, the V2's finding good hits. And Zaqzorn scatters his infantry. Zaqzorn trading well. Well, not quite. Was trading well. Crushes with the tanks, very good. And drives them right through to destroy those V2s. No V2s in this mix for Zaqzorn. He's gone completely for tanks, rocket troopers, riflemen, and mammoth tanks. HansNihall is forced to move back, and I think he's going to lose this whole expansion. We may be looking at a base trade here, but this is an attack on main from HansNihall. Zaqzorn loses his main MCV and his service depot. Has to sell his tier 3 tech. Wow, this is going to put a dent in his plans. Zaqzorn coming out with V2s. Down to 6 harvesters against HansNihall's 11. And makes a move on Hans's main base. Hans just sells it off. Hans on low power. Those flamers are going to trade relatively well. Holy cow. And a slightly inadvisable attack move from Zaqzorn there. HansNihall has still got his second expansion, but that's all he's got. $26,000 to $21,000 of army value for each player. Zaqzorn in the lead. HansNihall with his ore trucks in a very precarious position, looking for an open spot on the map and not finding one. And I think this might be over for Hans. Oh, power bombs. Wow, finding great hits on the infantry mass of HansNihall. A Tesla storm is brewing, but can it stem the flood? His tanks getting choked up in each other's carcasses. But the mammoth will not be deterred. Zaqzorn has to rebuild from radar tech. No, he doesn't. No, that's Hans. Excuse me. And Zaqzorn is going to try to keep his mammoths alive, but they are going to path right through that minefield. Looks like two of... Oh, he paths them differently. Very good. Very good. HansNihall hanging on to this game and meeting the minefield of Zaqzorn. Probably not being used as intended, but still effective. Zaqzorn without a service depot. Same goes for HansNihall. And losing so many harvesters to those mines. Combination of flame troopers and mammoth tanks, specifically anti-infantry. Zaqzorn with good eyes on the field. Rebuilds his service depot. Oh boy, low power. Oh dear. Those V2s. There's just no answer for this right now. Anti-aircraft capabilities of the mammoth tanks will prevent a airstrike. And those Tesla coils are just going to, or excuse me, those V2s are just going to chew away at this base. HansNihall's got to kill that aircraft and disable the line of sight of Zaqzorn. Iron Curtains, the flak trucks. They're moving in, but they're not focused on the aircraft. They take out the V2s, take out the aircraft, and now this force from HansNihall is effectively blind. Hans is completely surrounded, though. He's got, well, I suppose he can move out that way, but he's got the minefield in the way. Badger going down, but not before dropping the paratroopers. Zaqzorn targeting the expansion MCV and killing it. Oh dear. This does not look good for Hans. Zaqzorn is on the warpath, and Hans only has a small contingent down here. Yeah, no kidding, that hurts Hans. No kidding. Oh. Nuke getting ready. Both players going for nukes, but 5 minutes and 15 seconds till we see it from Zaqzorn. I don't know if the game's going to last that long. Zaqzorn might just bide his time. And that last contingent from HansNihall, the last real remaining force of his on the field, gets wiped out. Both players have gone nuclear. 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Zaqzorn ready with power bombs in 20 seconds. I wonder what Hans is thinking right now. Power gets taken out. Come on, don't call a good game. I want to see the nuke drop. 42 actions per minute for Hans. He is scrambling. And power bombs coming in. Calls good game at 22 minutes and 13 seconds. Wow. 1,185 to 1,054. Game goes to Zaqzorn. And, you know, the Mammoth tanks. Can we talk about Mammoth tanks and how much I love Mammoth tanks? If it is... Whenever I think of that song, Hell March, that's what I think of. Just Mammoth tanks rolling through bases. That's awesome. Great line of sight from Zaqzorn. Targeting Hans's power and really reacting to the threats that are posed. You know, with the composition that he had before, with the V2 rocket launchers, given the line of sight by the aircraft, I mean, he really had it. If it wasn't for that Iron Curtain that Hans deployed, Zaqzorn probably would have won the game a couple of minutes ago. So let's go to the ecograph. We can't see the whole thing, but both players trading back and forth, and surprisingly, Hans finishing the last bit of the game in the lead. But Zaqzorn keeps it consistent and is able to mine continuously from this location. And also, for a while from this location, I would have liked to have seen these ore patches better utilized. But hey, he won. So, really can't criticize that. Let's go to the army graph. HansNihall with a big advantage at one point. Really defeats the forces of Zaqzorn and pushes them back. But, yeah, I'm not really sure what happened there. Zaqzorn just able to hang on to this expansion for the whole game and moves his production. There was a base trade at one point, but wow. Anyway, on to game number 2.
Battle control terminated. Battle control initialized.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Red Alert Global League Season 9 Minions Round 3. In the upper left-hand corner, playing as Ukraine, we have HansNihall. And in the lower right-hand corner, playing as Russia, we have Zaqzorn. Let's go to the production tab. Zaqzorn with a 1-second lead in production and deployment of his barracks. It's going to be the first one to hit the field with troops, and yeah. This is an interesting location because you can't advance through here without destroying that oil derrick. So you have to go around. Whoever gets this spot first, and it looks like it's Hans. So I'm going to put my money on Hans at 57 seconds. And we'll see what happens. Hans surrounding the location sees that Zaqzorn hasn't gotten there yet. Zaqzorn's gone left with the Grenadier strike. 3 Grenadiers. Zaqzorn with superior troop mass. But Hans able to find a stationary location. Oh. Force fire command. He's looking for Zaqzorn's engineer. He's not going to find him, though. HansNihall's engineer going it alone, and HansNihall without a defensive structure queued up. This is going to hurt. HansNihall, 35 seconds until his war factory comes out. I'm not sure what's slowing down Zaqzorn. Well, I guess he's building on order. Both players going double ref, but Zaqzorn. Oh, okay. A base push. Here come the Grenadiers. And 3 throws, they're going to have it. HansNihall now on low power. Zaqzorn with a big troop force. Preventing the riflemen from coming out. Zaqzorn targeting the MCV. And spreading out those Grenadiers. I like that a lot. So even if one of them gets taken out, the rifleman has to move. That's going to slow him down. And there goes the main MCV. HansNihall is probably going to call it. That's a base push as well from Zaqzorn. HansNihall not one to give up. Good show, old boy. 31 actions per minute for Hans and 23.9 for Zaqzorn. I wonder what Hans' strategy is right now. He's coming out with an APC and an engineer. Okay. I would really like to see this work, but I don't think it's going to. There's a flame tower right there, and it's going to snipe that engineer as soon as it pops out. HansNihall, with only refineries left, not giving up. Well, okay, refineries and a war factory. Pulls his ore trucks, finding great crushes. Zaqzorn moving in next door. And Hans has 10 seconds before he loses this game. That's good game at 4 minutes and 44 seconds. Zaqzorn winning both games. Wow, very good. 103 to 24. Let's go to the ecograph just because we're going to go to the ecograph. Not a lot to say here, folks. Zaqzorn, you know, very successful with that Grenadier strike. And honestly, HansNihall should have had a defensive structure queued up. If he did, he would have stayed in this game. But knocking out power really slows down your production. I think it almost doubles the amount of time that it takes to produce. And yeah, losing his barracks while selling off the barracks. The combination of Grenadier Strike and Base Bush, that was good. As soon as Zaqzorn saw that the Grenadier Strike was successful, he moved out. And those flame towers really sealed the deal. So, both games going to Zaqzorn. Red Alert Global League, Season 9, Minions, Round 3.
Battle control terminated.